Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights and strategies. So sit back and relax, let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So welcome to our episode today of the Business Women Australia podcast show. I'm Lynn Hawkins. I'm the National Director of BWA, and we're streaming live across LinkedIn, across YouTube and Meta Facebook, and I'm on the traditional lands of the Binjarra people who are part of the larger Noongar nation, and I'd love to pay our respect to Indigenous elders past, present and emerging across the whole land we call our own Australia. And you can catch up and listen to this show and all our other episodes on Spotify, on iTunes, on YouTube, on Meta, on LinkedIn, on our website. Wherever you look, we are there, and we would love you to actually comment and subscribe to our shows. So I'm delighted today to have my beautiful friend. We go way back and we have worked together in various ways over the years, but Maree Gooch is one of the co-founders of a wonderful organisation called Value Creators, and she's on the show today. We'll be discussing future-proofing business, and we're going to delve into resilience, into ESG and strategic growth. It's a very timely episode, I believe, particularly with the changes that we're seeing in the world today. And we're going to explore this intersection of business endurance, future planning, and environmental, social and governance, ESG, and why business resilience requires this balance between acting now and planning ahead. Maree is a massive advocate for planning and the importance of planning. And together with her co-founder, Anne-Marie O'Callaghan, and the team at Value Creators, they have very deep experience across a wide range of business sectors. And this includes sectors like finance, hospitality and tourism, Indigenous enterprises, agribusiness, transport and aviation, just to name a few. So Maree's known for creating value wherever she goes, and I can attest to that. She certainly helped me along the ways in various enterprises and ventures, including BWA, that I've founded. And she's renowned for her pragmatic and innovative approach. And she's really good at explaining very complex and evidence-based business concepts and frameworks in a way that you can really understand and apply in your business. So I highly recommend anyone who's listening to this episode and looking for someone who is a strategic mind who can facilitate them in their planning, reach out to Maree, and her contact details are on our website. But we'll get into this really important subject matter. Welcome to the show, Maree.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks for that introduction. I'm very flattered and very excited to be here and hope that I can add some value to some of the listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. So, I mean, it's a bit of a hot topic, resilience and ESG in business today. Let's just talk about resilience to start off with. I mean, when we think about resilience, we often think of it as a personal attribute, but you talk about it as a business attribute. What do you mean by a resilient business? What are the characteristics of that? And how can we cultivate a resilient business?
At Value Creators, we focus on 3 pillars. So there's people, and we focus on helping the people get upskilled and so that they are ready, willing and able to jump in and get going. We focus on business, and you know, your comment about business endurance and business resilience is very much part of it. And then we also focus on industry. So whether it's facilitating disparate groups to come together, whether there's large buckets of money in government departments and private enterprise, or industry associations to come together to make sure they're on the same page. At the same time, kind of the community is wrapped around that. So that's what Value Creators stands for. So when it comes to thinking about business resilience, the fundamentals are the same across all of them, really, because you've got to get the roots in the ground. Think of it as a tree. You've got to get the roots in the ground. From little things, big things grow. We've heard the song, but getting the foundations right is what we have found over 3-4 decades of our careers is to get the foundations right. You stress test things and you think about what is the future, what are the scenarios that we would want to create. You do some scenario planning, you identify your stakeholders, and even mapping them is a great idea, but identifying your stakeholders and then seeing how you can work with them. How can you make the pie of whatever it is there that you might be working on bigger for the organisation that you're working with or for the industry group, so that everybody's not operating in silos. So we're very much a believer in make the pie bigger so everyone can have a piece. And then that flows into it's not a sprint. Going into business is not a sprint. It's a bit of a marathon for those that have been around for a while. And if you make it to 3 years, you're doing well. If you make it to 5, you're doing really well. 7 and beyond, great. And then I'm also involved with Family Business Australia, and I have met some businesses who are 6 generations. My own family farming business is 6 generations here in Australia. So, that's an exciting thing when you can actually say, there must be something right there that they're doing. So they're considering their risk. They're thinking about the future and creating the future that they want. And then they go through some planning. And we're great believers in organising strategic planning, thinking, we're here and we want to fly to the moon. How are we going to get there? And then systematically putting in some sort of process and steps. We're there to help, or if you've got your advisors, we will work with them to help them help you. And probably our whole mission statement is to help you help yourself. So if you get yourself right and you get your business right, the rest will flow. Jim Collins wrote several books about it, one called Good to Great. And there was, I think it was 13 years, he studied thousands and thousands of people, thousands of businesses, and it all came back to culture. So a lot of what we do is making sure the fundamentals are there, back to your question of resilience, the fundamentals are there, and then helping the organisation and the people to upskill and then actually apply the lessons that they learn, but be there to catch them if they need to, or direct them to other advisors, because we need help and support in different areas as we and our businesses grow. And it's, to stay with the same advisor may or may not be the right thing for you, but then to think a little bit outside the square and think, yes, I need more or some direction or whatever that is, then, that's what we do.
Yeah, resilience is such an interesting word, isn't it? And I think, you and I are both country kids, and you've still got very deep roots in the country. And we see a lot of resilience growing up in country, regional, rural and remote environments. It is, when you talk about 6 generations of farming families, they get it right, but they've also got an incredible grit and resilience to weather through the tough times, to tighten the belt when they need to, to stay committed to it during the ups and the downs. So when we think about the characteristics of resilience, when we think about that applied to a person and applied to a business or an organisation, then this ability to withstand and be prepared for the times when goings are tough. And I think that's why you're always sort of focused a lot on that sort of future planning, scenario planning. I love the way that Value Creators is always very much promoting the importance of scenario planning, because I see too often people getting hooked into one plan and going head on into that without doing scenario analysis and looking at different plans and different pathways. Just even the process of doing that builds resilience. Because should things change, and we know things always do change, that's one thing that's for certain, is that change will happen and things outside your control will happen. And I think that's one of those things that agribusiness is really leads the way, because they are so much, determined by what happens with climate, which is totally out of their control as far as I know. I think there's just some idea of science creating our own climate. But I'm yet to see how far we are with that. But so when we think about those characteristics of a resilient business, what advice would you give to leaders to cultivate these characteristics of being able to stay committed to something for the long term and survive what life and outside forces throw at you?
I think you mentioned, thank you, Lynn. I think you mentioned a word called grit. And grit to me means almost an inner feeling, or it's not an emotion to me. It's more, it's just a sense of being and a sense of self. So grit to me means you have self-efficacy, which means you can have the ability to change the world. Self-belief, whether you do feel it strongly or not, but just a little inkling of, okay, I think I can do this. And if not, then who can help me and support me to get there? Self-worth. And for some, we struggle with the Cinderella complex or the imposter syndrome. Again, who can help us get to the point where we feel that we are okay to be able to do whatever it is? To me, resilience and grit is the ability to bounce back. I have, from my own personal experience, I have had very difficult years of low income or no income and going backwards, and there's legalities and things involved in that. So we had the ability to pay our bills and loans, but I learnt in my early 20s owing a lot of money, like 7 figures times several, at 22% interest, that I never wanted to be in that position again. Thank goodness interest rates have come down, and these days we find things are more manageable. But I made a conscious choice for myself and for my family that I never wanted to be in that position again, and I have done my absolute everything to make sure that never happened again. Lots of stumbles, lots of falls, lots of jumping off the steps and getting back on again, lots of support from others around. And I will thank Business Women Australia in that, and yourself particularly, in part of that evolving as well over the years. I think it's important to find the support processes, whether it's people and or the processes and or advisors, to go and help you get to where you want to go. I didn't know what was going to happen in the early 90s with our farm. I was a farmer for nearly 25 years, and I'm really proud of that. And we did a lot of innovative things in 2 different locations. One was Bremer Bay on the very south coast of WA, and one was at a place called Beverley, which is just 135 k's east of Perth. And we were often doing things that were a bit outside the square, and I thought that's what everybody did, but it turns out it didn't. Everybody wasn't like that. And my husband, Neil, would come to me when I'd come up with a bright idea and say, how about we do this? He's like, oh, no, not another. I'm just coping with what I'm coping with now. So I'd go away and I'd do a trial. So I learned to do a lot of research and development. I learned to do that scenario and stress testing. And I learned that to do something in a small way was a good way to practice. So hence the scenario planning. So I'm probably living proof of resilience, because I had to, and then because I wanted to. So with Valley Creators, and my colleague Maree O'Callaghan is from a similar background. Sorry, I'll mention that we grew up at a little place. Well, I grew up at a little place called Gillingarra, which is near Moora, and my family are still farming there. And Anne-Marie's family came from near Karoo, or are still there as well. And she's got that same sort of grit. So between us, we bounce off each other, but we hold each other accountable and we hold each other solid and strong. And it's a really amazing place to be. We've got a team of 14 that come in and work with us at Valley Creators, and they are amazing. They are the top of their game. They find us or we find them, or they might come through one of our programs. So that's really exciting, but it's that camaraderie and that support. And I know that if the chips are down at whatever's going on and I need to phone a friend, I know confidentially that I can say, hey, I need to talk about A, B, C, D. So we need to fill up our library of people to help us do that. And I'm very grateful, Lynn, for you being one of those. As you will remember, Valley Creators, after COVID, we had a great first year. I'll just give an example, if I may. We had a great first year, and we started in late 2018. We had a great first year, 2019. We're hanging on by our fingernail. Woo, this is great. And then the COVID lockdowns hit, and I was like, oh, my God, what? As did everybody.
Yeah, a lot of your program was out and about, wasn't it? It was like a lot of it was delivering in the regions.
People, yeah, and a lot of regional stuff. So, yeah. And then, slap, as did everybody. And so we said, oh, let's turn it online. And every person and their dog was going online running programs. Oh, that's not going to work. Let's just take a step back, maybe lick our wounds a little bit, but let's just take a step back and press pause. As you know, we needed someone to help us. So Lynn came in, which was wonderful. And by geez, did she press our buttons and did she make us think about things. But what we did was push ourselves beyond the limits of where we were thinking there. We went there, 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 we went there. Interestingly, 5 odd years later, every single thing we put in place as our dream came together within 4 years. So whether it was the programs that we were running, the funding or wherever it came from to get those programs so we could deliver them basically free for people, which was the STEM Jumpstart for rural women, the Upstart program for 18 to 35s, the Farm Business Resilience Planning program, and multiple others. So we have had a hell of a ride, but we planned for it. But also at the same time, as you're talking about being resilient, we needed to know that we needed to be malleable and movable in case something didn't happen. And again, my own personal experience, we'd sold a farm, we'd taken off around Australia in a double-decker bus with our 3 kids. They were 6, 9 and 12 at the time, living the dream. We were negotiating a business the whole way that we travelled 35,000 k's around Australia in that year. And it fell through at the last minute and we didn't have a plan B. So what we build into Value Creators is the plan A, the B, the C, the D, and done a lot of succession work with small businesses, family businesses, and government departments. What's your plan A, B, C, D? And you know, you might look at all of them and go, I want a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. Okay, put that together. But by running through those scenarios, it means that you can pick out the bits that you want and then pull it together as the mosaic or the tapestry that you want, and you're off. That was a long answer, sorry.
I love it because what it's done is it's painted what needs to be committed to if you want to build resilience as a business. Yeah. And what Maree has just described is a beautiful story that paints a resilient business, and it's one that isn't just going head on into the command and control idea of one person at the top who's feeling the pressure and stressing out and thinking, how do I even balance immediate priorities with long-term planning? Oh my God, you know, I can't take the whole team out for strategic planning day. It might be all right for Maree and Anne-Marie to have Lynn come and facilitate. But when you feel that you have to have all the answers as a leader and you're driving the direction, it leaves you little time to step out, reflect, and do these strategic scenario analysis. You know, the gift of COVID that gave you, now you're giving to everyone else. But so how can leaders who have created these kind of structures where they are so focused on these immediate priorities that they really struggle to actually get that balance between that long-term strategic planning, what would you say to them, Maree?
I would suggest that they, if they've been in the, it doesn't matter if they've been in the role 5 minutes or 5 years, actually press pause, remove themselves from the office, press pause, take a step back, see what's the business been doing for the last 2, 3, 5 years. What do the finances tell you? And the finances tell a story. And if you don't, anyone listening, if finance is not your friend and looking at the financial statements of your businesses, your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet, make it your friend. We run these programs to make it easy to understand. So most people's eyes glaze over unless they're an accountant or they love numbers, which is, you know, probably, there might be 50% of the population, but this 50% don't. We recently ran a workshop for a small but very dynamic organisation with a huge balance sheet and a not-for-profit, and some people's eyes were glazing over. We went through the whole process. We explained what the finances were, and they've gone, is that it? Yes, that is. There's all this financial speak that's confusing to people, but so make finance your friend. Sorry, side drop in about, you know, the workshop that we run. So take a step back, Look at your finances, because they will tell a story, and drill into them, because why did that happen? How did that happen? Why did that happen? How do we not let that happen again? What do we have to do differently? Where do we go and get more sales or revenue or whatever it is? And how do we reduce our costs? Because some key things, these are banking rule of thumb, and everyone write these down if you hear it or replay it. If you increase your productivity by 1%, it can impact your operating surplus, your pre-tax spending, your earnings before interest and tax by up to 10%. If you reduce your variable costs, whether it's wages, not salary, wages, internet costs, electricity, by 1%, it can impact your EBIT by 15%. If you reduce your fixed costs by 1%, it can impact by 9%. If you put your price up by 1%, and it can impact your EBIT by up to 25%. So really quickly, there's 59% that you can be doing to your business just by doing some minor adjustments. So have a look at the numbers. Then have a look at the people. Who's doing what? Are they playing to their strengths? One of the things that we do often is go into organisations and help them understand what their strengths are. So it's getting back to the people side of things. Play to your strengths, do what you do well, delegate to someone or find someone else to do whatever it is. That's difficult for entrepreneurs, because you're the entrepreneur and you're the one starting everything, but also entrepreneurs are really good at certain things, and then they need to actually find someone else. And as a serial entrepreneur, I've figured out that I need to find other people to do things that are better than me at doing them. And then start to think about, what is it that you want? And does your business have a strategic plan, or is this what it's all about? Or is there an overarching industry strategic plan? And let's be candid, what is the current government doing or offering, or an election promise, and how can you help them and them help you? So are there buckets of funding available where you can go and help the government deliver whatever it is, or hook into that? So actually analyse what those election promises are and what's available. Register for some grants. Look into the R&D tax incentive. These are kind of operational things. So my first thing would be to press pause, take a step back, have a look at the business, have a look at the people in the business, have a look at the finances, think about where you want to go. Do you have a board? What is the board directing you to do? Is the board skilled enough to do that? Do you need to help them become more skilled? Do they need to help themselves become more skilled? That's a whole nother conversation. And Business Women Australia can, help with governance, and there's a multitude of people in Business Women Australia now who you can go and get some help in that area. So they are my probably go-tos, Lynn, of what I think is needed. And then what is the change that's needed, as in what is the catalyst for change? And it might be you need to make more money, or you need more resources, or you need to complete a job. What is the catalyst for change? So Change Management 101, great book called Leading Change. It's got Penguin on the front. John P. Cotter, one of my favourite authors. If everyone needs to have a look at it, please do. There's probably summaries on Amazon. You'll need a champion. So you may be that champion. So you need to model the way. You need to show people. You need to lead. Good leaders will show people the way and then support them to get there, and also to implement. So it's a bit of a tapestry, I suppose, or a kaleidoscope, and it kind of needs to change as it needs to change. So I hope that answered the question.
It certainly did, and I think that's very practical. You've really made that sort of puzzle, all the pieces of the puzzle, really clear. And you talk a bit about this importance of the scenario planning. And if we look at that as a tool for future proofing, can you walk through how a business would use it to adapt to these emerging challenges that are coming up? What are the sorts of things that they, would tackle if they're doing scenario planning?
So if we go, you mentioned ESG, and that was part of the topic of this. ESG, environment, social license to operate, and governance, is legislation. It came in October of 2024, and it's taken a while for our federal government to implement that. Anyone not knowing, apparently ESG needs to be on your balance sheet. So if you're in business, it needs to be on your balance sheet by 30 June 2026. But there's a whole lot of unknowns. But there's a whole lot of it's a bit on the nose, as you mentioned earlier when we were talking. So we need to think about performance of the business. We need to think about accountability. We need to think about sustainability. But in my mind, not just being sustainable. So there's sustainable in my mind from the carbon neutral and the energy consumption and data privacy and that sort of thing. But if we're in business, we need to make a profit, because we can't go backwards, because there's a lot of legalities and stuff there as well. So if we need to be making money so that we then have choices and we can put food on our own table or pay our mortgage or whatever that is. So making a profit is a good thing. And I think that, I probably think that's what goes into scenario planning, and then just thinking about the what ifs. I am reluctant to say to anyone to race off and do anything without doing scenario planning, so that you can consider what are the barriers to your wonderful idea? What are the critical success factors that need to happen to make it happen? What are the strategies that you might implement different to strategic planning? What are the strategies? How are you going to make that happen? And then the actions. What are the resources that you need? Do we need people? Do we need money? Do we need time? Do we need all? Probably. And then something that we forget to do in Australia, we do forget, is to celebrate. How are we going to celebrate? And this is sort of the base of change management and change management planning, but we use it as a goal-setting template. But we do it as a scenario stress testing as well. There's lots of models that you can use. If you haven't ever heard of the Ishikawa model, it's in a fishbone, and it's usually used to stress test a problem when a problem has happened. But I actually use it, I flip it, and I use it as a scenario planning exercise as well. So there's all the various things of the fishbone diagram, and you can use them as bubbles. So I use these kind of models as prompts to help with scenario planning. And it's often organic as to whatever pops into my head when I'm talking with people about, I think you need that, or I think you need that. But that comes with 4 decades of experience of why. We do our tried and trusted. I was talking with an organisation we're going to help do some workforce planning, doing that in the coming weeks. And it's to do with policy and planning and training and workforce development in the food fibre training industry. And that's really exciting to be able to be participating and helping organisations with where they're going and making a difference into the future. And it's scenario planning is underlying a lot of that.
And you just mentioned, the importance of a strong ESG practice and the fact that it's going to be legislated in June 2026 to be on the balance sheet. Have you got any good examples of a business that's led to business growth or competitive advantage by embracing these ESG practices? Is there any that come to mind, or in any industry groups that seem to be using it as a great competitive advantage?
I'll declare that I'm involved in this business. It's called Crisp Wireless. So Crisp Wireless is a provider of fast, reliable internet. It is in the regions. Crisp stands for Crisp Connected Regional Internet Service Provider. And I'm the chair of it. So I do know this quite intimately. And we set up Crisp in 2016 to provide fast, reliable internet out in the regions. We now offer NBN everywhere in Western Australia, which is kind of exciting because the business has evolved so much. It was very much focusing on sustainability, as in providing fast, reliable internet, accountability, being the best service provider that we could be and over and above others. And we have done that even in weather events of cyclones, of fires, of floods. We've been able to do that. Performance is everything. So if that business does not perform, we certainly know about it really quickly because our customers let us know. We have focused on energy consumption. We have focused on research and development, climate change, our workforce, training our workforce. We are very careful about data, privacy, AI, cybersecurity, We operate under 4 acts. By the way, it's a bit sad, but I like reading legislation to see how it can all work together. And we operate under 4 acts. And if we don't get it right, it's a $4 million on-the-spot fine. So we have to get it right. We work very hard with community engagement. We are very much about human rights as well. Community engagement, we give a lot back to the local communities wherever we are. We are focused on diversity as well, different population groups. So we have, of our team of 14, we have a whole bunch of different people from different population groups, gender, etc. We align with the UN goals for sustainability as well. So if you're thinking of how do I unlock ESG for myself and my business, have a look at the UN sustainability goals and think which ones do you actually really resonate with. So with value creators, with value creators, the UN goals that we align with are number 17, and it's partnerships for the goals. So it's about working together with others. And then underlying that is poverty. And then with CRISP, we kind of go across a lot of them: education, choices, sustainability, water, but it's all very much about the bigger picture, so that people can have connectivity, so that they can actually do what they do. And 1, be safe, but 2, run their business as well. So we set CRISP up with the end in mind, and then a way to give back was, when we're rich and famous, we're not by any means, and we're a long way off that, but how do we give back to the community? And when we get there, we'll know we'll be providing scholarships to university and or vet qualifications, but the only catch is someone has to go back to a region to do their prac. So I recently did a merge, so I'm always constantly learning and looking and doing things. So I recently did a mergers and acquisitions course online through Wharton Business School, which is kind of like a Harvard, but it's through University of Pennsylvania. And it was a great thing to stress test, how is CRISP going, and have we done things as they should be done? And there were a couple of things that we needed to do. I think one thing I needed to do was a stakeholder map. And that was it. We knew our stakeholders, but we didn't have a stakeholder map. So we'd set the business up really well, and it aligned very strongly with the E, the S, and the G. So we are always learning. It is a moving target because the Australian Accounting Standards Board, AASB, is formulating it. There are a couple of larger accounting firms. One is RSM, who are running workshops about what you need to do about ESG. So I'd very much encourage people to get on board. And we're in the process of developing and unpacking what does ESG mean and where does it fit with you, notwithstanding, as we spoke about earlier, the changes that are going on globally and the fissures and fractures that are happening globally, and how do we make that, work for us. But if we go back to the legislation, once it's legislated, we have to do stuff here in Australia. So it's legislated, so we just need to be aware of it. And the sooner you start to put things into place, the easier it's going to be. So if you use Xero or MyOb or some other accounting package, once you start to put the things in place, re-ESG, it'll be easy for you. So CRISP started to do that 2 years ago in advance of when it was needed. It's kind of how they, the team in the office like to roll. And it's very much about supply chains as well. So if you're in a supply chain for an organisation, they will be asking you, where do you fit with ESG and what do you do? It's not just about carbon neutral. And then you will probably need to be asking your suppliers, where do they fit? So you do need to get your house in order, but it's hard when you don't know where the pin the tail on the donkey is and the donkey keeps moving. So that can be difficult. It's just something to alert people to.
Yeah, we had a great podcast with Dr. Kate Ringvale, another leading member in Business Women Australia, that's very well worth listening to for those of you who are thinking about getting ready and prepared. If you're looking for someone to come inside your organisation and audit and provide and map it out, Kate and the group at Galactic Cooperative do that on a daily basis with their community, their wider community as well. And they've got some other examples of great other providers who've got some online tools that are very useful. So, very well looked after here in WA around that. But, it's something you just mentioned there, which was really interesting around what CRISPR's doing with the regions around connectivity. One of the questions I suggested to you was regional businesses often have different needs from urban enterprises, and you came back with a change in that question that you highlighted, or do they? And I find that really interesting. So tell me, do they or do they not have different needs, and how does this strategic planning differ in the context of regional, rural and remote, or is it not different?
Well, I think my thoughts at that point were to go, every business has its challenges. I do think that resources can be challenging in the regions, and certainly connectivity is a huge challenge. So yes, in the regions there's housing, there's employment, there's education, and there's connectivity and health. So they're kind of the fundamental challenges. But in the metropolitan area and towns, we face those as well. The cost of living has gone up, so people are challenged with putting food on the table and rent. You might run a business in a regional town. It's wildly successful because it's an online shop, or you are supplying to your town. The challenging part is in regions, yes, population. So population means turnover. Turnover means sales and revenue. Revenue goes into profits. So, but you could be having the corner store or a cafe in the Peel region, where I live too. Do you want to start a cafe? Well, there's 500 cafes here. Why would you want to start another cafe? What's your point of difference? So you need to be aware of that, so that the fundamentals of strategic planning and why do you want to do whatever it is that you want to do don't change and are similar. It's probably those factors that I mentioned earlier that do. But then we can be really lonely and have our shingle hanging out and our business happening in a metropolitan area and no one comes in. So one of my key and favourite books is one called The Tipping Point. So I'm throwing books at everybody for this. The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell is, what do you have to get your widget to so that everybody wants a piece of it? You can knock it over in a weekend, or you can read a chapter each night. It's quite enlightening, where he basically talks about three kinds of people: mavens, connectors. Mavens get things done. Connectors have networks. And I can never remember the third one, but I'll call them soldiers. And so some people can be a maven and a connector. I'm a maven and a connector. I've got great big networks. Same for you, Lynn. And many of the women in Business Women Australia and many of our professional networks. Then there's the connectors. Who are those with the big networks? And then there's the soldiers. Some people like to do what they do and not get involved in any of that networking stuff and not get out the front and talking to people, whereas I'm energized by talking to people. I do have to go and hide in the corner and get energized again sometimes, but I'm energized by others. So it's a great book. So I'll just pop that out there. I think the scenario planning and thinking, okay, how are we going to make this work? I think you've got to come back to the fundamental of, you might have a great idea, but why is it a great idea for someone else, and can you make a business out of it? Or is it a hobby? And I guess what I ask for is, what's your value proposition? What is the problem you're solving? And what is the biggest need, want, or pain point? So CRISP started because there was pain out there that there was not very good internet, and it's done really well. We're across 80,000 square Ks and 30 local governments, and the local governments are generally our first customers. So that's really exciting. Mine sites, all sorts of things. But also in that, switching to another provider is not difficult. So we have to be absolutely on game and provide the best service we can, whether it be service talking to someone or service providing the internet. So if you use that as an example, whether you're the cafe in Narrogin or you are the cafe in Mount Lawley, if you don't make good coffee, no one's going to come. But if you make good coffee, they'll be lining up out the door. Or now it's yogurt. Seems to be yogurt. If you have good yogurt, people line up out the door. I drive past somewhere, sometimes there's this little Italian restaurant in South Perth. You cannot make a booking. I think they've got tables enough for 30 people. Every time I drive past between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m, there's 50 people outside just waiting to go in. So what is it that they are doing? I'm sure it's the food or the coffee, but they've got their formula right and they just keep doing it. So the other thing about business and strategic planning, regional or otherwise as well, I think is important to note is big is not always best. So, if you want to multiply and magnify, great. If you want to start other locations of your businesses, great. Do your stress testing, do your scenario planning, and then think why are you in this business and what are the pitfalls as well. So be please considered about your risk. Regional businesses are distance. That distance is an issue, and getting to training, even though online is fabulous now, and learning is now much better because we can listen to podcasts and we can attend webinars. But distance and getting freight or goods freighted to you, if that's your business, you're selling widgets, it can be incredibly expensive, and then that sort of flows through to the expenses of the others as well. I think it's a mindset, actually. And when I lived regionally, so I lived at Bremer Bay for 550 k's from Perth, and I had a bed and breakfast. We had the farm, I had a bed and breakfast, and I also had a restaurant and a catering business for nearly 10 years. I never felt isolated. I went and found the business and I brought the business to me and my catering businesses. So I do think it's a mindset, but then I think you need to be pretty open-minded and grounded, hence why great advisors and great people to stress test that can keep you, focused.
Yeah, you've touched on so many amazing things there for people to consider and to factor into their analysis and their planning, whether or not they're building a bigger business or scaling or what have you. But we're coming towards the end of our time together. So looking ahead, what are the major sort of global or regional trends that you think will define business strategy in the next decade? What are the things that we need to be taking into account? Obviously, ESG is a very broad subject, and we've pretty much covered that. But what else should we be thinking about?
I think AI is fascinating. It's as in artificial intelligence, not artificial insemination. Sorry, being the farmer, artificial intelligence.
So fascinating for any farmers listening.
Sorry. Artificial intelligence, use it for good. I think it's, there's who do we trust and what should we use? And if you use an open source AI, be aware that it's open source. If you're using AI, make sure you've got the credentials, as in ability to stress test it and make sure. I recently used it. I was doing a diploma in positive psychology and wellbeing, and I used it to help with some of my assignments, and then I rewrote them because I didn't want to be using AI, so I rewrote them anyway. But I was fascinated by having read all of the content and knowing what I wanted to say, how quickly it could formulate a response for me, but it was absolutely on spec. So I was stress testing it the whole way. I thought that was very interesting. But if you're using it as well, make sure it's you, as in your flavour, I suppose. And people can sniff out when there's no authenticity. So I think that's just probably something to be aware of. Internet of Things, as in using our smartphones to turn on the air conditioner and to manage CCTVs and things like that. I think the Internet of Things is just going to continue to explode. I think cybersecurity is something that we need to be very mindful of, and I know that through BWA you have members who are experts in these fields. I encourage everybody to jump on board and find those experts, and I know you've got other podcasts happening as well, mentioning Katrina Ford as one person who is an expert in that area. I think disruption is coming, and necessity is the mother of invention, or is it just a fluke that we find something? So I think disruption is something that we just need to be mindful of, vigilant, embrace it, or consider whether we do or not. I think politics has the ability for disruption very much. We're seeing it globally with things coming out of the US and Asia. We're seeing it in Australia with some political decisions that have been made which have impacted industries significantly, and some shut down and some been sponsored. So, there's a lot of movement there as well. And I think this generation, the younger generation, I'll say that sort of pretty much anyone under 35, they're looking, as we discussed, they're looking at sustainability differently. There was a book I read once called The Indigo Children, and it's pretty much anyone under about 32. They were born between a certain time frame. It's like they're old souls, and they've come and they're here. And if we think about the people under 35, 32 that we know, I'm pretty sure there would be some, what I would consider an old soul. It's like they've been here before sort of thing. I'm not into all that sort of stuff, but they have an awareness. They are pragmatic generally. I do hear lots of things about, there's the workforce and young people these days, not great sort of thing. But the ones that I come across are incredible. They are dedicated. They are committed. They are passionate. So I think if we can find ways to tap into that creativity, innovation, passion, and provide the pathways or the platforms for them to shine, then our world will be a better place. That we will always have the outside the square thinkers and the random people, and we need that. We need to actually encourage that. But we also need that pragmatic and wonderful viewpoint of people who are not of our generation. I once read a book when I did an exec MBA a few years ago. That's how I met Maree at UWA. And I read a book, and it was talking about this next generation and how disruptive they were and how rude they were. And it was the baby boomers talking about Generation X. Well, I'm Generation X. So, and now we've got several more generations. So I always thought that was funny. So the generation always thinks about, they don't know anything.
Yeah, all of the boomers, the ones who brought in rock and roll and upset their parents.
All of that. I think collaboration and providing experience.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The wonderful thing about youth, isn't it, that they bring the disruptive ideas to the table, and they've got a different desire for a better world, and their world will be better. It'll be more engaged. It'll be more real, I think, than the one that we've created for them. And the sooner we start recognising that we've got to think about what the baby wants at the table, and the future generations who haven't been born yet. We're just custodians of this planet.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to put it, Lynn. And I work really hard to try and bring the next generation in, whether it be on a board or a committee that I'm working on. I had a young woman who was 21 at uni, and she came onto a board that I was the EO at. And I said, would you like to be on this board? She said, why me? I said, why not you? But someone had said that to me in my early 30s. It was an older man, and he said to me, would you like to be on this particular board? Throw your hat in the ring. I was on it. It was to do with policy and planning for the state government of WA. It was great. I was on that for 11 years. But he said, why not you? So, I think it's up to us to create the doors to open and provide those for others in the platforms, and learn from them, but also maybe give our viewpoint so that they can learn too.
It's that dual process of mentoring. And, we didn't get a chance. I really wanted to dig into that mentor sort of process, because that's something that you are very much a leader in, and you're very involved with mentoring others. And we might actually use that as a topic in its own right down the track. But if you were to give one, the whole, it's the whole thing. It's such a dual way process. I've been mentoring too at UWA, and I've learned so much from my mentees over the years. But if you could give one piece of advice to wrap up to the business leaders who are listening to this podcast show and looking to future-proof their companies, what would that one piece of advice be?
Ooh. I've thought about this and I'm bouncing around. Understand yourself first and then understand others. As in, understand what you do well. Play to your strengths. Delegate where you can, or bring in or outsource where you can't do or don't know how to do. And sometimes we don't know what we don't know, and that's where Valley Creators does work well. We often find people, or they find us, they don't know what they don't know, they need something, they're not sure where to go. So understand yourself first, and that goes straight to the business thing as well. So understand your business and what you do well. Can you help others? Need, want, pain point, problem that you're solving. Because if you don't know that and you can't talk the talk or speak it, I don't know if others will believe you. So you have to believe that first. And that's something that came to me probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And you can tell by my age, you know, I'm more than 20. So it came to me, and when you are passionate and you know your worth and value, it comes out of you. So I'm so excited to have been part of this and to convey even a little bit of this and have some fun speaking with you. And I hope it's been interesting.
It sure has, Maree. I'm dying to get you back on the show. We can dig deep into some of those amazing things that we've touched on and other things that I've been writing down furiously that I'd be keen to explore with you. Thanks for being on the show. Thank you to those of you who are listening. We've got people listening across Meta, Facebook. Some of you are tuning in from LinkedIn. Some of you are listening to us live on YouTube. And you can catch up on any of those channels, plus on iTunes and Spotify on the Business Women Australia podcast show. Look for our new show. We do have an old show on iTunes, but find the new one. It's got the same kind of branding as this. And if you're not sure where to find us, you can find us on our website. We're under resources, under podcasts. So if you're thinking about joining Business Women Australia, we would love to have you. You can find our calendar of events and our joining information on the website. If you're not sure about whether or not you're ready to join, come along to events as a guest. Everybody's welcome. And if you've got any questions, please reach out to me. I just want to plug our we've got a leadership development retreat in Ubud in Bali on the 7th to the 10th of August. And actually, that last piece of advice that you gave us about understanding self and understanding others reminded me of our retreat, because that's exactly what those 2.5 days of development are going to be about, really exploring deeply and unlocking sort of who we are and what we stand for as leaders. And then in doing that together in a collective, you actually learn how to understand and hold space for others, and learn how to see, really see and hear who, others during their exploration of themselves. And as leaders, as managers, as consultants, as executives in organisations, or entrepreneurs in our own businesses, these kind of skills that we're going to develop and practice over these 2.5 days are extraordinary. They are unique. They've been developed over decades with Business Women Australia practicing it. That's the wonderful thing about our community, is that we've been trialling and doing things that are very unique, world-leading practices that come from ancient traditions and contemporary human resources leadership development practices combined. And I think the world is ready for this. The movement is a balance between the feminine and the masculine energies that we all have. And it's really quite exciting. I've just finalised the detailed program with Vida Carlino, who has helped shape this. It's been absolutely instrumental in the design. So anyone who wants to see that detailed program and thinking about coming along, there's nothing like it's our first one. We've got a lot of people on the wait list for next year who can't make it for August this year, but we do have some places available. So if you are listening and you want to join us in Bali in August, reach out to me. I'd love to share the detailed program with you. Thanks for being on the show, Maree, and we'll have you back another time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights to empower you on your journey. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe to stay updated in our latest episodes. And if you're not already a member of Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? Head to our website today and join so that you can connect with a thriving community of inspiring women across Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.